Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wellness Wednesdays with Stephanie. I am Stephanie Buckland, your host, and I am so excited and delighted to be bringing in my friend and colleague, Joe Rockey. Joe, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love being able to help you here, Stephanie. I love being a part of your world.
Thank you. Yeah, this is honestly one of the biggest parts of my world. I love sharing wisdom about wellness. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation. So I would love for you to give our audience an introduction. Who are you? What are you up to? And what kind of magic shows up as a result?
Yeah, and why is a guy who has a book that says casino salesmaster going to have any idea about what wellness is? Let's just hit the elephant in the room up front. Um, so the fundamental reason I am here and I'm so excited to be here is because as people, we're capable of doing many different things. Let's start with that. But really, at the end of the day, there is one overlapping part that every person universally shares. It doesn't matter whether you're a good electrician, you're a good orienter, you're good at driving a car. It doesn't really matter. But every person has this one universal need, and that's to build and maintain amazing relationships. And when we talk about when our wellness is broken, normally there's some component of an important relationship or a relationship skill is deficient. And that is really the centerpiece of what my world is and why it works. And then to answer the elephant in the room, I took that skill set into casinos and got the people who were never supposed to pay anyone to pay me because I know how to connect with people and build amazing relationships and do it really quickly. So that's what I'm here to try to help people so that you can have that joy of things are better than they were. Like I can talk to my mom again, or I'm not afraid to go on the internet because someone might be stalking me, or anything like that that can leave into a downward spiral, but actually build into an uplifting environment within ourselves that then has a massive ripple effect on those around us.
So why? Why did you get into this? What is it you think that led you into this work?
A lot of things. That's kind of that. There's not a linear route on this one here.
It's
So
a loaded question, huh?
it is. So part of this is I've been in sales since I was 16, and I'm in sales in an all or nothing commission only way. So if you're not good at building relationships, you fundamentally can't sell in a way where you will be happy looking at yourself in the mirror. If not, you
Mhm.
become the used carsman trope of you're not leaving this lot unless you're taking the car I want you to. And like most people, I couldn't live or sell that way. So I went out and learned a relationship based approach of how to do it. Still pairing, obviously, the foundation of how to sell. I'm classically trained by two of the best sales company in the world, but it's the relationship element that I've combined. And I began in 2017 my own podcast, not to compete with yours, but what I do is I'm with the way that the Roman Catholic Church is built is it's broken into languages because it's international, it's around the world. I am co-hosting a show with the guy who is number two for all of the English language for the development of the faith. So said another way, I have recorded 7+ years worth of episodes talking to people about or talking with him about three main prisms: your relationship you have with yourself, the relationship you share with others, all underneath of the relationship or the umbrella of the relationship that you have with God. And looking at that together, pulling those elements of classically trained and the spirituality, which really is relationship skills of more so than a religion context, of bringing that all together, seeing how it changed the world, and wanting to do that for other people. Because I do firmly believe that sales will heal the world. And when you do it correctly, it's having amazing relationship skills and using them correctly.
I love that. Yep. That I think is why we're having this conversation because I think, I come from a very holistic perspective. I look at everything. I look at your entire life, and that includes your work life. It
Mhm.
includes your family life. It includes your spiritual life. It includes all of the aspects of your reality. And when you start to examine your whole life like that, you can start to see where the parts are on fire, where they're not
Mhm.
working, or where the things are falling apart. And so relationships are one of those key elements that you're right, kind of cross over all of the boundaries, all of the pieces.
Mhm.
Because essentially, like your relationship with yourself is a huge part of that. Who you
Yeah.
are, how you show up in the world, how you navigate in life, how you contribute to society, all of that. Like we are uh, really dictated by who we are as a human. So I love this. I'm excited to talk to you about this.
You're 100% right, and you hit upon one of the great lies that I don't know the last two generations, I mean, basically our generations, and the one below us, have been thrown at us. But it's a lie and it's damaging people's wellness like crazy, which is the concept that you can compartmentalize. Um,
Mm,
you can't. Your brain is not capable of that. If you drive down the road and you cut someone off and you're a giant jag off in traffic, you then think, oh, well, I'm a good and fair employee and boss. I treat people nicely and I'm the best dad in the world when I get home. The reality is no. All of it, as you said, blends over. The reality is most people sink to their worst state. So if
yeah,
you're that person as a horrible driver, you're probably bad to your employees. You just don't see yourself that way because no one ever sees themselves as the villain in their own story. But that's
yeah,
probably the reality of what you are. You might not be having the infinity gauntlet and snapping half the world away, but you're doing something that's wrong. And it then carries into everything else. So that's one of the things I invite you before we even start in anything is compartmentalization is a lie. And do not try to think that I'll just be better with my kids and then the rest of it will take care of itself because it doesn't. That's not how your brain works.
right, right. So let's get a little deeper then.
Mhm.
So, how does one really examine who you are? How do you look inside? What do you guide people through?
Yeah, I mean, this is really hard. Um,
Right. The
Essentially,
work is never easy,
that's true.
right?
That's true. So essentially, to give a little visual analogy here, our brains have a bouncer in place between where we want to be right now and all the stuff that happened before us and formed us. And it kind of knows what's on the other side of that wall. It knows what the big scary things are. And in general, just like a kid on a temper tantrum, it doesn't want to have them be addressed or deal with them. So your brain is going to naturally resist trying to do this type of work. People have it exhibited in a lot of different ways. Things like numbing themselves, like procrastination, all these different things that you find yourself like, why am I not really doing something else? Like I started three new businesses just so I forget about this problem, or I went on a bender, or I just started dating every person in the South Pacific. Like every person has their own version of what this is, but they're all essentially distracting because I don't want to deal with what this issue is in my past that's causing this action now. And the scary word, which is normally the scariest word that gets people before they even start any of this, is they're afraid to be vulnerable, vulnerable with themselves even. And that is the reality of it is you don't become unvulnerable, if you will, just by saying, okay, whatever comes at me, I can take, because that's first off, your brain won't let you. And second, that's also not vulnerability. What vulnerability is similar to humility in this, in the fact that it's a balance. You know, you can be on a scale of strength, you're either here or here. That's a spectrum that you're just trying to get stronger or faster or whatever. You're not trying to nail a balance. But with vulnerability, you have to. Because if you overexpose yourself in a situation when you shouldn't be yet, first off, for instance, when you're with a brand new stranger, if you come up and reveal all the deepest, weirdest parts in your soul, you become a stage 5 clinger and an oversharer. Whereas also, if I've been with someone for a while and I never share anything with them, you're cold and distant. It's hard because it's a relationship based upon others, but it's a balancing act that we all naturally know where it should be, but where the barriers come up is where we have our barriers with ourselves. Like, I
Yep.
really don't want to think about something that's scary or there. And unfortunately, human nature being what it is, we don't really be willing to confront that until something seriously has broke around us. And we'll
Yep.
walk past all of the warning signs along the way, but it's not until we get the divorce papers, or I've been driving like a jackass so long I just caused a 7-car pileup, or whatever the case might be. Um, you know, in every trope in a movie, you're in a courtroom for it, but there's a lot to that. I mean, something went broke here, but now I will finally address the problem within me. And the
Hmm.
reality is we don't need to wait that long, because the
True.
longer you wait, the harder it is to be vulnerable with yourself. So that's the starting point. I feel like I just gave like a 5-minute monologue. I want to give you a chance to jump in, but that's the
That's
starting
amazing.
point of where we're at here.
It's, that is, I appreciate it because I think that really, when it comes down to healing, when you're starting to look at your life and trying to heal through some big trauma or some little traumas that are holding you back, it really does. It starts with vulnerability. It starts with really being able to open up to your truth,
Mm-hmm.
open up to your shadows, open up to your darkness and say, okay, I see you, darkness. Now, what are we going to do about this? Right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And in that notion of big traumas and little traumas, the one thing that we have to recognize is inside ourselves there is no relativeness. So like
Mhm.
outside of in the rest of the world looking at others, it's relative. Like I can see that team scored more than that team, so therefore they won. They put up more points. That's relative. But if they were playing, like just take the NFL that just happened. One team scores 38 in Denver, the other team scores 22 in Miami. That team that scored 22 was enough to win that game. Maybe they're a better team that scored 38, maybe not. But we treat our traumas the same way. Like, oh man, you were only living under the steps for 4 months. I lived under there for 10 years. Like, no, that's still a trauma, regardless. Like, it's not a contest. And I think that so many times we get caught into this relativism of, well, it's not as bad as what they had to go through. I should be able to get over this. Well, no, that's not how traumas work. It's within you. Is it important and meaningful to the bouncer that's blocking your mind? And
Mhm.
that's really the answer. And it doesn't matter what someone else went through or didn't. What matters is what was meaningful to you, and to a large extent, when it happened to you, in terms of your development and other things. So that is one of the things I always like to put out there, because there's people who try to put on this stoic, you know, nothing will ever happen to me type thing. When the reality is, it doesn't matter, relatively speaking, what it was that you went through or someone else.
Mhm.
So I want to point that part out up front, because a lot of people miss that and will neglect this entire conversation because they won't think that they had anything there. And quite frankly, maybe that's true. Relatively speaking, you haven't had anything crazy, but that doesn't mean it's not something that's meaningful inside of you and inside of your brain that's causing issues. So yeah.
Sure, sure. I mean, we might be talking about, an emotionally absent parent,
Hmm.
which isn't essentially as traumatic as like an abusive parent,
Hmm.
but it is still a trauma. It's still an experience of what? Neglect, betrayal. We have these really heavy words in our language that talk about how we've been assaulted or how we've been injured in some way. But when it really comes down to it, trauma is simply where you weren't heard and your needs weren't met. And that could be
Yeah.
just about anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's one of the things that I try to walk people through, of how to get that bouncer at the door to let us do that. So if it's okay with you, I can share an exercise that I do with my clients that could be helpful.
Sure.
This is our Tuesday exercise. Um, Basically, what you're called to do is to close your eyes and put yourself in a sensory deprived environment. What I mean by that is turn your phone off, don't have obnoxious lights on, have it be as mellow and calm as possible. And I want you to close your eyes and see a Google screen, just the pure white Google screen in there. And this is the memory bank of your mind. And I want you to type into that Google screen things that didn't go the way I wanted them to. Now, the thing about your brain in this Google box is they're really cool. Instead of giving the most scariest things on the first page, they're way at the end of the list. So the ones that are going to come up are the ones that, yeah, they didn't go the way I wanted to, but they're not the big scary traumas that we just talked about. They're things we can handle. And I want you to click on that first link, and it's going to take you into a video of what happened. Now, this is one of the harder parts, but I want you to try to pop out of your own body and look at the two people involved, yourself and whoever is there, as just person A and person B, and watch what happened. And ask yourself the question, is the interaction between person A, person B, or however many are there, was it correct? And what should it have been? And just sit in it. Sit in with what happened and what should it have been. Don't try to fix it. For about 5 minutes or so, rest in that tension of this is what I want, this is what it should have been, but this is what it was. Now, the sitting in it is the hardest part. That is the part that actually is going to open up your vulnerability skills. When you do that, you open yourself up to a lot of fixes in today. Sure, I saw what should have been better. Maybe this event happened years ago. Maybe it happened 20 minutes ago. It doesn't really matter. The point is that when you consciously sit in tension that requires vulnerability to be exposed, you naturally start building new pathways for the way to interact in the future. And that is the starting point to answer one of your questions from the beginning of the show of how do you become more comfortable with your own tensions, is the answer is you build up your vulnerability. And this is the drill that I give people to do that. And again, you're talking overall, if you go through 2 different memories, about a 15-minute experience that you have with the lights off and your phone off. 15 minutes a day just to do that once a week will radically change your life. And it's just one of those things that I give as a nice little starting point as far as how do you become more vulnerable? How do you become more comfortable in your traumas? That's how. Now, does that solve your traumas per se? Not necessarily, but it makes you more comfortable being vulnerable. And that's oftentimes a huge starting step that we all need.
Definitely. Definitely. When you open the door, a lot of times that's when you start seeking out your healer to
Mm-hmm.
start to examine and like process that trauma. That's
Yeah, that's
mighty.
exactly. Yeah, I don't pretend to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist or anything like that. But you're exactly right. It leads people to figure out who I should be talking to, or at least the
Yep,
speciality, the commonality of the problems I went through or whatever. And like I said,
for sure.
exactly, it guides people to a direction to go to that next step as they need it.
Yeah, that's I think that opening that door is really part of our soul journey. I see our soul journey as this lifetime, and if you believe in past lives, all of your other lifetimes culminating into this is who you are as a soul, and this is why you're here, and why you're stepping through this is essentially that we live in Earth School. We live in a place where we're supposed to be learning and growing as we move forward through life. And so when you start to look at life and start to examine how do I fix my problems, you can't do it topically. You can't do it from the surface. You really do have to dive deeply into yourself. And so I love this practice. So where do we go from there? So obviously, if you're seeking out a healer, find your healer.
Mhm.
but the work it doesn't stop there, right?
Mm-mm. No, no, the next day's exercise is now that you sat in attention to those. And these are intentionally a day apart because the
Mm,
process of letting time be involved, letting you going through a sleeping process is essential. So as you come back the next day, the calling is to revisit those and then figure out what actions you could do to fix that relationship now. And that's a different question because now you're asking yourself, what is the course of action to redo something that happened from a younger self? And sometimes it's recent enough that you can click undo, like it's still in that virtual form, to use a computer lingo there, but sometimes it's so far in the past, it's beyond all the save points. We actually got to go a new direction. And this might mean calling up someone that you haven't spoken to in a while. This might mean, you know what, there's a lot more than just this one memory with this person. I want to visit a couple more of them before I'm ready, which is also what you should
mm,
do. Um,
mm,
but actually looking at what could be different. And even if that person has passed, communicating with them and letting it be essentially not saying it's okay, but I'm not going to carry this with me anymore. So in that sense, I am allowing it to leave. I'm not necessarily, again, we're not saying it's okay or that you should continue this behavior, but I am not going to continue with this hook holding me in the ground and keeping me from move forward that quite frankly you probably don't even know or care that you put there.
mm,
Because this is another thing that I like to point out that most society doesn't want to point out because they make a whole lot more ratings trying to push other agendas. That is a lie. Most people fundamentally don't care who they're hurting. Most people just are cutting off any car that's in front of them. They don't care who's in the car. Most people
mm.
fundamentally don't care about you. And that's not an evil thing. That's a factual thing. There are
Oh
billions of
yeah,
people on this planet. How could they possibly
definitely.
care about you? So
Definitely. I tell my partner all the time, everyone lives in their own little bubble.
that's exactly it. So no one is singling out you for any variable you have about yourself. It's not your size, your mental state, your color, your height. No one cares about any of that. Just you're an obstacle in my way. I want to pass you on the road. And it doesn't matter who your neighbor was, if they're the kind of person who's going to be hating on everything. Second, you go in their yard with a 3-year-old, they're going to be complaining. It doesn't matter anything about you. It doesn't matter the kind of dog you had or whatever. That's what they are. And that's how most people are. So
Mm,
the reason that people don't bring that up is because, quite frankly, the news found out a long time ago if you say the word racism that you can spike your ratings. And the reality is, most people aren't. Most people are just jerks to anyone, and they're non-discriminatory. They just are, and that's one of the things that accepting that fact because it is true really opens up the ability for this healing process. It was nothing personal against me. So why am I letting this person keep their claws in me from me growing forward? Why am I letting that happen? So
mm,
I'm not. I'm just going to recognize that that person might have been the problem. Obviously, you leave the possibility that you're the problem open as well. That's why when you look at person A and person B, you objectively, based upon the relationship at foot, how should it have been? And we all kind of know what the relationship should be in an ideal world. Like we know what it should be between siblings, between coworkers, between parents. Like we know what it
mm.
should be, and that's what the exercise is. Like I said, that's the Tuesday exercise. And then the Wednesday exercise is, honestly, have I gone through all of my memories involving this person? And now what should I do about doing something about it? And for some people, it's going to be picking up the phone and calling them. For some people, it's going to be internally letting them go. It all depends upon what the situation is for you. And again, your brain is good enough that you'll know what it should have been and you will be able to figure out what the next course of action there is. So yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. This feels very much like a journaling experience where you'll, examine and then write some thoughts down and then
We get there on
revisit
Friday.
and then write some more thoughts down and start to process the experience. Because,
Yeah.
I think one of our biggest problems as humans is that we forget that we have to process experiences. We forget that
Mhm,
we actually need the time to move through and experience something that was big and hairy and monstrous and painful.
mhm,
Um, Sometimes it's like we're expected to be robots. And that's what society expects of us. That, oh yeah, you got to go to work on Monday, and you better be there bright and shiny and happy at 8 o'clock in the morning. And if
mhm,
you're not, well, you're gonna pay for that. And that's the thing. If we really examine human beings and the human condition, like, we are multifaceted. We're complicated. We are sometimes messy, sometimes
mhm,
disorganized, sometimes imperfect, and that's okay.
mhm. Yeah, but here, this is a slight tangent, but it's also relevant. Um, there are over 20 different motivating factors that any person can have, and every person ranks these 20 factors differently. There is no one answer. And quite frankly, your own motivation factors will change throughout your life. They might even change throughout your day. There
Hmm.
is no one answer to what people should want, do want universally. It just doesn't exist. So to try to use relative analysis about whether you're getting what you want or whether you're getting what you need is impossible. At the end of the day, this is fundamentally why communism always fails, because there is no one way to give everyone everything, because there is no thing that everyone wants aside from basically air, water, and health, which you can't even do that because there's so many different things there. I mean, you go to literally just to a different county within your own state, taste their water. It's going to taste different and foreign to you, and you're not going to like it as much, or you're going to like it way more and hate
Hmm.
your own from your own county. But these people are
Hmm.
totally fine with it. Same with the air. We just don't really have metrics on that. The point is that we adapt and grow to what we want in the moment and need in the moment, and that is good. Recognizing that that's part of what makes us different is a strength. If we all think of how, if you've seen a newborn, what's the only thing they want? They want to eat and be seen. Now, some of that we want throughout our lives, right? We want to be seen and heard. But there's also plenty of moments when I just want to be left alone. Just stop looking at me, stop talking, just let me be. Very different motivations. And obviously,
Hmm.
there's appropriate times for each. There's sometimes that I only want to be recognized and appreciated for what I did. And there's sometimes I just want to be just take the donation and shut up type thing. And we all have our different versions of these. And again, it's appropriate and correct. Part of your job as an owner and a manager is to connect people with their motivations for where they're at in life. That's how you build a much better workforce. As someone who's
Hmm.
built 29 businesses, I can strongly attest to that. And the reality is that there's this flawed notion of everyone should want the same thing, and it's not true. It's how you try to build a following for a cult or a movement, but it's not the reality of how human beings are.
True. Yep. Yep. So let's see. What's next? So after you've sat with your whatever experience and you've examined your relationship and you've spent some time with it, maybe you've made the phone call and you've done the letter, you've written the email, and you've completed the task.
Mhm.
What's next?
So Tuesday is sitting in the tension. Wednesday is doing something about it. Thursday specifically for sales, so we can skip that. But
Sure.
Friday is when we do. You use the term journaling, and there's a lot to that. The difference between what I'm having my clients do versus traditional journaling is that in traditional journaling, it's basically your thoughts, your moments, your expression, talking to them now and writing them out. Nothing wrong with that. Not trying to denigrate that at all. This is a spin upon it. This is taking someone who is in your life that you want to have a meaningful relationship with in the future, and regardless of your age here, and regardless of their age in the future. So you can be 100 years old and still do this exercise. What you do is you take that person, imagine them 10 years from now, if that wouldn't be age appropriate, take them to when they graduate from high school or college, your call. And once a week, Fridays, you pull out your phone and you either leave a selfie video or an audio message for that person in that date in the future. You again, you're arbitrarily selecting that date: high school graduation, college graduation, X year anniversary, X amount of days from now, whatever the case might be. As long as it's longer than a year from now, and you're talking to them as if they are in that state, so adults or whatever the relationship you want to be in that point, and you're talking to them as if that relationship is already here and now, and you're doing these recordings, and you pile them up. I mean, you literally are doing one of these a week every Friday. So you pick your really 1 to 5 people that you want to do this for. Tends to work the best. You know, I've had some people that picked up to 20 and they have to rotate one each week, so they're really only doing one person a month. I prefer and think it is better if you do the same person every week. Digression. And then you leave all these. Then you have all these notes. You have all these voice memos. You have all these everythings. Those in and of themselves are incredibly powerful. I've seen people give a thumb drive of just their recordings for their 20th anniversary, and they appreciated that way more than the giant Kobe style diamond. So it's like, why did I buy the ring? Type thought. And that's part of the gifting element. You don't have to give these, by the way. You can also keep them and delete them, because the real power of the exercise is that visualization and communication about what your world is right now and what you want it to be with them in the future. So if you're doing this with a child, I really couldn't tell you the reason I hated your first boyfriend when you brought him home when you were 13 years old. I couldn't tell you that then. You wouldn't have gotten it, but hopefully you'll get it now. Or whatever the case might be. Hey, I don't know. I got really upset this one time, and this is what was really going on. You, as a 5-year-old, aren't going to get that. But this is the reality. Now that you're older and you're in a spot where you can't, you're there. And ultimately, you're doing all of the relationship skills that you've been working on in the entire week building up to now. You're thinking about earlier in the week what the ideal relationship should have been. And then for this situation, what will it be when we're there? And you're helping to map out what your plans are with this relationship. And again, if you do it with the most important relationships in your life, not only will you keep doing it, but you also will build up a ripple effect that happens into the rest of the relationships in your life. This is how you combat what I began this episode with, which is the compartmentalization. Everyone pulls themselves to their lowest point. This is how you do the opposite. You start bringing yourself up. And this, like I said, will change your life, and it drastically will change the life of those who you're doing this for.
Great. Absolutely. I think really that is why we do this work. And it's not just about ourselves, is it?
No, it's not. It's absolutely not.
Yeah. So yeah, you might be living in a bubble, but you have people around you. You might have a spouse, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a lover. You might have siblings or parents that you need to heal relationships for. This is something that I think really speaks to emotional intelligence
Mm-hmm.
and the idea that we don't have to be who we were as children. We
Yes.
don't have to continue to have the same ways of being and the same ways that we interact and show up in our relationships as we did in the past. And so that's essentially what we're asking of you is continue to do the work, continue to look at yourself, continue to examine yourself and really take personal responsibility
Mm-hmm.
for who you are and how you create your life because I mean that's really what it comes down to. So,
Yeah, I mean, this was 3 drills to do once a week, and if you really break it down, this is the difference between the top producers, the most successful people, and those who aren't. Is they do exactly what you said. They don't stay in the same patterns that they fell into. They examine themselves and they move forward. Now, that doesn't mean everything's always perfect and they write and they never get cancer or hit by a bus or anything like that. But it does mean that they give themselves the opportunity to grow and to excel and to be able to overcome. Most people, once they hit a groove, they never leave it because that bouncer at the door is too scared to be vulnerable with. That's the
Yeah.
reality. And
Yeah.
doing this, it's simple, but it will drastically change your life. And just because it's simple doesn't mean it's not hard. It is.
True. Oh, so very true. Well, so what else would you like to share?
Well, like I said, if you just basically fundamentally focus upon those, you will be able to radically transform your life. There's one other piece. Again, we do this Monday because I like to start with the positivity entering into the week. Is that no matter who you are or what state of your life you're in, we all have resources within us that can come out and be exhibited regardless of what our external resources are. So, for example, say tomorrow you're completely bankrupt, you have nothing. You're basically cast out with nothing to rebuild. Well, every person has things inside them that they can rely upon and use, regardless of the limitation of their external resources.
Mhm.
And these are essentially character traits is how you would describe them if you're playing in a role-playing game. What is your commonality traits, stuff like that. Things like I'm a good listener, or that I'm attentive, or whatever the case might be. There's not even a real infinite list of this. And there's no right or wrong answers. Things that we have within us that we naturally like doing, but maybe we haven't done in a while, naturally want to do in an ideal state. And the cool part about society is since every individual is naturally built to be a vessel for relationships, if you lean into what you naturally want to do, be a good listener, be attentive, be humble, be willing to stand up to whatever's wrong, and you actively do that and you do it in a way that is what's appropriate to you in that moment, which it will make sense to you in that moment, you'll never be bound. And that is something that is so uplifting and so powerful that it takes time to settle in. I mean, that's why we do this on Monday. Monday, no one likes Mondays. So you start off with something that's happy and awesome, but it also sets you up for, what, I do have these awesome and great abilities and talents. Now I'm sitting down with these memories that weren't awesome. Maybe if I would have used this, or maybe I would try to work patience into my life, or whatever the case might be that I didn't quite figure out how to do it then, but now I know how to do it now. And
Sure.
it's all something we have within us, but so often when we get in those stages, we get afraid. We shut down, and then once that happens, you're not fixing yourself internally. You're trying to blame the external, and that's
Right.
not the way to growth. That doesn't work at all, actually. Fixing yourself from within, and then learning the currents of the water around you are how you get downfield. I mean, it's how you get upstream. So that's the
Hmm.
that's the other thing that I like to share is just knowing that. And like I said, we walk people through that with our program. That's what we do. And our whole program obviously is guys to be better, or not guys, but it's geared to be better at sales. It's casino sales master. There's no guy, there's no getting around that. And it's amazing that from just a sales perspective, when you gear it everything towards a relationship, whether it's in sales, being a manager, or whatever, your life gets better. It goes back to what you said in the beginning. Our lives are holistic. Who we are at work, who we are at home, who we are when we're asleep, they all intertwine. So when you can bring the power of making meaningful relationships into every element of your life, everything improves. And the external factors that we care about, time, money, power, they come after the fact. And normally it's one of these things that, wow, it came in massive force and I never thought it would have, because I was willing to bring relationships and myself openly and vulnerably into this situation. And that's what happened.
Beautiful. I love it. I think, we're talking not just about really healing or removing trauma or processing. We're really talking about manifesting a better future.
Hmm. There is a lot of that, which you control your own future. That's part of what I try to teach people on Mondays is you're not bound. I mean, yeah, you might literally be bound, but there's always a way to have yourself internally become stronger, and opportunities present themselves. And when we're in a state of running away, fear, blaming, numbing, whatever, we don't see the opportunities. But when we're focusing upon what goodness we have and what goodness we can share, we see them all around us, small,
True.
big, etc.
Yeah, I love it. Wow. What an amazing conversation. Thank you. I think that, people really need to hear this. It is something that we don't really talk about. It's not something you hear in the news. It's not
Mm-mm.
something that, you might hear it in your therapist's office or with the healers that you work with, but we don't talk about vulnerability. We don't talk about uh how to create internal strength. We especially in American society, it feels like we live very topically. And I think that if people are willing to take a moment to look in the mirror, see who they are, see how they're showing up, see how their relationships are, and do some work around yourself and others. And like give yourself that opportunity to learn and grow. I think it's huge. So thank you. Thank you for your wisdom.
Oh, you're welcome. And one other point to that, since you brought up the Society of America, they are very, very good at figuring out how to keep you engaged in whatever world they're trying to pull you into, whether it be
Yep.
Facebook, staying through the commercial break, or whatever. And one of the things that is incredibly powerful is even if it's only for an hour a week, fully disconnect. And I don't mean while you're asleep, but actively and consciously disconnect. And that's one of the other byproducts that comes from sitting down in a quiet, stimulus-free environment where your phone doesn't go off. You get that benefit too. And it's remarkable how less tension you feel, how much less anxiety you feel just by not having a
Mm.
little vibrating machine in your pocket that tells you you need to do something every 10 seconds. And the reality
Right.
is you don't care that your cat drank some milk. Like, I don't care, mom. Like the cat can drink all the milk, whatever. Why is this something that gave me anxious? Like there's something important that's going on my phone, and now it's like there. Let alone all the self-image things that, well, wait, if they're all doing this stuff, why aren't I? And again,
Right.
the relativistic stuff that comes um, from the algorithms are built to keep you in a state of engaged with them. And one thing is wildly true. We can see this exhibited in a lot of ways, but I'll use Hollywood as the example here. Comedies and action movies make vastly more money than dramas. Vastly, especially comedies. But you see on average 6 times the dramas to one comedy. It's a
Hmm.
whole lot easier to write tension than to write happiness. But the ones that can get celebrated forever. And if you think about it, the most powerful and popular actors are probably from a comedic premise or a comedy spin-off of whatever. You know, think of any soap star. Half America won't be able to name anyone on any of the soaps ones that didn't do that. Like, there's what, 5 million soaps? Can't do that. But you know who Ryan Reynolds is?
Hmm.
I mean, that just as a quick example. You know who Chappelle is? So these are facts, and the networks and the social medias that are fighting for our attention, the advertisers get this. It's easier to put you into a negative state and keep you engaged there than it is to have yourself do the work stuff we just described here to get out of it. Turn it off. Again, I know that you have to go to work, you have to turn on your computer and all that, but I mean, you can't even go to gas now without trivial crap being coming out of the thing now. So try to turn it off as much as possible. Your life is better for it. And the life of those around you is also radically better for you. It also will help you
Hmm.
see more opportunities.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Wow. Okay, Joe. So I would love to share with our audience, how can people reach you?
Yeah, so the easiest way is casinosalesmaster.win. I mean, you guys can come to me, you can get both the book and the course there, become part of the program. That's the easiest way. It's casinosalesmaster.win, all one word. Come on. We start with a lot of different entry points as far as where it's appropriate for you. I invite you to read the book if you haven't. It is an international bestseller, so there's a chance that you've heard of it and read it already. It is phenomenal, and that would be the easiest way. CasinoSalesmaster.win.
Excellent. Now you're on all the socials or some of the socials. What are your favorite socials that you play on?
I pretty much only play on LinkedIn anymore.
Just
Because of
LinkedIn.
what I
Okay.
just said, disconnecting from it is so important. And I'm on
Just,
LinkedIn basically for business. I don't
oh yeah.
do, when I see a personal thing on LinkedIn, I'm like, why? Like, that's not what this is for. That's part of why I'm here. But yeah, that's it. Like I have a Facebook and Instagram, but I don't use them. If you want to connect with me, casinosalesmaster.win, or you can find me on LinkedIn, and I am Joe Rockey Jr. And you can find me there. I almost guarantee, I don't know when you'll be listening to this, but I can almost guarantee you I'll be wearing a blue shirt.
Awesome. Okay. And so for my last question of the
Mhm.
day, what kind of inspiration would you like to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing is that you have the power and you can do this. It's scary, just like any other journey is, and not to go cliche on you, but it's true. You have the ability to overcome whatever obstacle is in your life. It might be hard, it might be scary, and it might take a really, really long time, but you will be able to do it. And it does start with that relationship that you have with yourself, because the nature of human beings is, as you develop and fix your own relationships with yourself, it does naturally ripple into your relationships you have with others. And as that rippling effect happens, it creates just cross opportunities for all kinds of different possibilities as long as you leave yourself open to them. So that would be the thing I'd want to share is this is 100% worth trying, worth doing, and it will give you a massive difference. It's just not one of these things that's measurable up front. Like you can't tell, like, oh, I'm now 6% better at relationships than I was yesterday. No, it just one day it all clicks and it just happens. It's kind of like when you rode a bike. You fell a lot in the beginning, and then next thing you know, boom, I can do this. And the problem with relationships is that we all think we know how to do them because we kind of have to do them by default, and it doesn't
Hmm.
mean that you're doing them well. And there is a giant difference between self-teaching ourselves, which most of us do is, oh, that line didn't work, so I'll try saying something else. Or, oh, I felt bad doing this, I'll try something else. We learn by making mistakes, then growing better, which is great when you're a child. Yes, fire was bad, I'm not going to touch that anymore. Or not listening had consequences. We don't have, that's not the way of building yourself up as an adult. Doing the exercises and analyzing your past means you don't have to make new mistakes in the future. You can build off of it.
Awesome. That was weird. You just froze right when you said child. I'm going to cut
Oh,
that out.
sorry about that.
That's okay. It could have been mine. My internet, your internet is unstable. So, gotta love
Well, now I'm either
technology.
giving a weird glitch for the audience or you homework to edit. Sorry about that.
No worries. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Joe. This has been a phenomenal conversation. I I love you. Love this. I love what you're doing, and I appreciate what you're up to. I think that if more knew what you're up to, you'd be even more successful.
Yeah, well,
So,
let's hope this podcast is a stepping stone for that.
yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Okay. Well, I hope you have a fantastic day.
Likewise. And I hope everyone here likes this. And as always, with every other podcast you're on, click that share button, tell people all about it, and give the written reviews. That makes a huge
Most
difference.
definitely. Yep. Thank you for saying that. Awesome. Okay. Bye.